Welcome to Can't Stop the Pop, the podcast where we, that's me, Matty,
and me, Craig,
do a deep dive on a song for the 90s or noughties.
So, Matty, what song are we doing this week?
We are doing Scooch, More Than I Needed to Know. So, Craig, what are your immediate thoughts?
My first thoughts are, how long can I get through this episode without mentioning Steps? I've failed already. Easy one for me. This is the best song that Steps never recorded.
Okay. That's a can of worms that I'm willing to open. Let's sit, Stu.
Yeah, so before we get into it, who are Scooch and why are we talking about this song?
So Scooch were a mixed-gender pop group that were formed at the dawn of the millennium. They were formed in the wake of all of the other groups that were around at that time, like the said group that you just mentioned, but also people, like S Club. And they had one album of moderate success, but I feel like the legacy of Scooch was cemented when a few years later they reformed to compete for the UK on Eurovision with the classic song Flying the Flag. They have just been staples of anything Eurovision related every year since. They must just have it blanked out in their calendar every single year. I think once you're part of that legacy of artists, you're wheeled out every year and you're at every single Pride festival. I'm pretty sure I was at Eurovision last year when it was in the UK, and it was amazing, obviously in my hometown, and they were quite prevalent, shall we say. But yeah, Scooch, I think they've got a somewhat bizarre legacy, because until that, they were almost forgotten about. Do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Again, it's really hard to talk about Scooch without talking about Steps for so many reasons. I guess we should probably say this song was written by Mike Stock and Matt Aitken and Steve Crosby. So you've obviously got 2/3 there of Stock, Aitken and Waterman. And Pete Waterman was off doing his own thing with Steps. So there was that link, but I'm going to speak up in defense of Scooch because they were actually formed, or the auditions for the group started in 1990. Objection. I'm just going to speak out in their defense. So auditions for the group started in 1997. So before Steps were what Steps were, there were already these plans to put the group together. And do you know who auditioned to be in Scooch?
Do tell me.
It is one Heidi Range, who then...
Is there a group that Heidi Range is not somehow associated with? The Spice Girls, Atomic Kitten, Scooch. She was just doing those audition rounds, those open calls. Every audition she was like, "Hi, I'm here. My name's Heidi. I'm here to audition for All Saints. I'm here to audition for the Backstreet Boys." Sorry. Love you, Heidi.
Oh my God. Please don't listen to this, Heidi. So... It took them a while to put the group together. Obviously, Heidi wasn't. So they had Natalie Powers, who is the main singer. I mean, and she has got an incredible voice.
Great
Caroline
voice.
Barnes, David Ducasse, and Russ Spencer. And they were entered into this contest on Live and Kicking. Do you remember Live and Kicking?
I do remember Live and Kicking.
They were presented to the general public on Live and Kicking in this sort of competition. It was a battle of the bands against this other group called Glitterbug. And the winner was going to get their single released. Scooch won, and they released their debut single, When My Baby, and it got to number 29. Not a massive success.
No.
I guess More Than I Needed to Know was a bit of a make or break single for them. This needed to be big. And it was. It's a quality song. I mean, this is great.
It's a great song. Once again, we just end up talking about Steps. And so the thing about it is that it's, you know what, that's not about Steps. You can talk about anything. You can talk about ABBA. You can talk about the blueprint of that melancholy dance track in that it's just heartbreak lyrics. It's the basis of the production is based around a piano. So everything centers around that piano riff and that piano build up that you've got, and all the synths and all the other instruments come around that as you go. Now, it is a touch twee. It does feel slightly dated in its production in comparison to something like a One for Sorrow or a Never Had a Dream Come True, but it's got all the elements there that make it very quintessential of the time. And it's just, as you say, it's dance melancholy in the absolute best way. And the way that it builds, it goes really sultry back for the bridge, and you've got Natalie's amazing vocals coming over the top, and then the sort of hi-hat begins again, and it builds up to the last chorus. It's great. This is a staple of my very camp gym playlist. If anyone wants to follow me on Spotify, I have a playlist called Gym/Party.
It's on mine as well. All of those things, I love it. I just think it's so catchy. It really showcases them at their best. Great hooks, really well performed. And the thing that I like about Scooch, and I suppose the thing that I think they clearly had a self-awareness of what worked. And I think they were very open about that. So there's no sense that, we're going to try and split the vocals up so that Natalie's not singing it all and everyone else isn't getting anything. This song works because it is Natalie singing it. It works because it's got one voice and some backing vocals.
I just can't not think about when you say backing vocals stuff. It's just always all these stories of these groups, like Girls Aloud, like Steps, like vying for those vocals. It is kind of refreshing. It'd be interesting to know if there was alternate takes, but I doubt it. I get the impression that it was always Natalie, as you say, front and centre. This wasn't going to be Lisa Scott Lee in the booth asking if maybe someone else can take the lead vocal, Faye or me.
But with Claire and Lisa's old singing rivalries, it's a touchy subject.
Second half sounded really natural, didn't it?
I don't think she should have started because I think it would build nicely with Faye or me and then Claire.
Oh my God, I need a wee.
Once again, old band rivalries have bubbled to the surface.
Which is my favourite moment.
I remember speaking to David a couple of years ago. There's an interview on the website if you want to look at it. But I remember he was really open about the fact that they all had strengths, and Natalie's strength was she was the best singer, and there was really no question of that. So when they listened to the material, he says they were just, you need to sing this because you are the best person to sing it. And it's not that she was the only singer. I am quite partial to their debut album. I quite like it, and there are other voices on it, but I think they had a very clear awareness of what worked for them and what was going to be their best shot at competing in a very, very crowded marketplace.
I think what stands out about Scooch is that I know we've compared them to S Club, to Steps, to All Stars, to all that sort of that conglomerate of bands. But what is special about them is that the production style of a lot of their songs leans a little bit more into what you would probably call Europop, in that it's got a little bit more of a European feel to it. As someone that's worked in Europe, and I used to live and work in Germany, they have a whole genre of pop over there and different stuff. And there's a real different sound to the production. It's a little bit simpler, maybe a little bit more twee, if that's the word you want to use. And it hasn't changed now in almost 20 years. And I feel like this is definitely from a more European dance perspective, typical of those sort of songs. I love it, and I really enjoy the singles that they released off this album. I just wish that they'd released more, because I feel like, especially with Eurovision, it always surprised me that they didn't, I don't want to use the term cobble together, but it definitely surprises me that they didn't want to put together something more after the success of Flying the Flag, sort of the legend of Flying the Flag, let's say that.
Well, I mean, I have to just say again, I sound like I'm getting uber defensive about Scooch here, but Flying the Flag was one of the biggest chart hits from Eurovision for ages. I mean, I know it's a really contentious song.
I more meant where it came in the competition, in terms of points. No, chart wise, it's one of the biggest that we've had in years in the UK.
I suppose I loved Eurovision, and I still love Eurovision, but it's one of the only times in the noughties that I really remember a song that we entered properly crossing over, particularly in the mid to late noughties when we were really in the doldrums. And I think Eurovision had this big identity crisis in the UK. And in some respects, Flying the Flag reinforced that. But in others, people really got on board with it. And it didn't do well. But I really think it did connect with people, for better or for worse. I like what Scooch did. I think this is their pinnacle. I don't think there's any question of that. I really like the album. I like them.
Me too.
I like the fact that they've stuck around. They still get together and do stuff on YouTube. And they still, like you say, pop up during Eurovision. They capitalised on this, and good for them.
They are busy, they are booked, they are coming to a stage near you soon. But for real, they have taken the somewhat short musical career that they had, and they've really given it a longevity, and they've stuck out with a fan base. And some of that is to do with the Eurovision fan base. But take it, run with it, own it.
I bet at their gigs, if this song, I know Flying the Flag is the one that will get everyone, but I bet this song absolutely goes off at their gigs. You know, that as soon as that intro and the opening vocal, I bet people go crazy. I would.
We'll have to see. Go front row for Scooch. Right, let's talk about the video, because I actually think my favourite thing about the song is the video.
Tell me what you see.
I just love it. For me, it's really interesting that you say that this obviously was their second single, but I really feel like this was the record label and them going, this is who we are.
Totally.
This is who we are as a pop group. Like, it starts off so serious, and they've got this like blue trench coats, and they're all like looking down the floor. And then within the space of about 10, 15 seconds, they've all taken them off, and they've had all their names appear on the screen. It's just brilliant branding, fantastic way to establish a pop group. And it's kind of like a Mission Impossible style adventure where the girls are looking out for the guys and the guys are looking out for the girls. They switch places. But like the color scheme, the blues, the yellows, it's styled so brilliantly. And it's styled in a way that obviously they've looked at what works and what doesn't work with some of these other said groups. And they've taken the elements that work and made it so them. The branding is just spot on. The only thing that I think it's not even questionable, because it isn't an unnecessary dance break. There's no need for the jingle here. It's just a bit of a weird dance routine. I don't know how you feel about it, but it feels very intentionally simple and like they're trying to be a bit cool so as not to look like steps. That, you know how when you had a Steps or an S Club video, it hits the chorus and then it's like, boom, here's the dance. This is the dance you're going to learn. It's essentially a couple of shots of them. You can't see me on the video, but just doing this. And just with this kind of pumping their arms in the air like they're doing shoulders at the gym. And yeah, I find it bizarrely choreographed. That's my only criticism of the video.
I think that in terms of the choreography, what they did a lot more was move around each other, if that makes sense. So rather than just stand in a line, they did a lot more walkography where they moved around each other in formation. So yeah, I sort of get that it's one of those dance routines where it's a bit like stop, do a hand movement, and then move around the other side or turn. And I get that. I also love in the room where the dance routine is happening, there's all these eyes painted on these orange screens. It's a really eye-catching video. It's a very eye-catching video because of the eyes. They really thought about the branding, and I do think this is sort of almost like a relaunch.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and they collect these pieces and they put them all together at the end, and it creates this squiggle. And that was, I don't know if you remember this, called the Scoodle. So that was their official logo.
I'd forgotten about the Scoodle.
And the Scoodle was on their website. You could go on their website, very early design website, and the Scoodle would be on the screen as your mouse cursor.
There was just such a great need at this point for bands to have branding. And when I say, I mean like mixed vocal pop groups, girl bands, boy bands. And I think you can probably thank the Spice Girls for that. But genius marketing, everyone's got a different Spice name and everything about it was perfect. Whereas it's really interesting. I looked at the eyes in the video and I was like, was that their logo? I was going, no, that wasn't their logo. But then it becomes about the sort of adventure Mission Impossible thing of like, we're watching.
Yeah.
It's just such a brilliantly branded video. And the whole taking off the coats at the beginning is amazing. It's high drama. I absolutely love it. And I think that, as you say, it is a relaunch. It feels very much like they went, okay, the debut single didn't do what we needed it to do. We need to establish who you are, what you do, what your names are, what the logo is, the fact that you're going to dance in your videos, but the dance routine isn't the thing. That's not the thing that they're going to come away from. They're going to come away with the song or with an adventure story. Brilliantly branded and such a great video, great song.
Great logo. And there is in existence an official lunchbox with the Scoodle on it. And I'm not going to lie.
Order.
I do go on eBay every so often just to see if there are any available because I would own that and I'm not going to lie, I would use it.
What you mean it's not readily available still on Amazon?
I think they're missing a trick.
Absolutely.
It must have pop merchandise.
Oh, right, Craig. So let's talk about the chart stats.
Don't freak out until you know the facts. Relax, Max.
It reached number 5. It was released on the 10th of Jan 2000.
Yeah.
And it was from the album For Sure.
For sure. Not for sure.
For Sure.
For sure.
Which makes zero grammatical sense. You look at it and you stare at it and you go, what? It's like For Sure. Yeah, but...
It's like there are 4 of them, sure.
4 of them,
yeah.
Sure there are.
This did reach number 5. It was their biggest hit. And I know I've been very defensive of them, but this was released in that early January when sales were so low.
Yeah.
There is a degree to which I suspect this song wouldn't have reached number 5 if they'd released it at any other time of the year.
Agreed.
Not to take anything away from them, but, you know, a top 5 hit is a top 5 hit. And I know that Flying the Flag did also reach the top 5. But that was a Eurovision. This is their biggest Scooch For Sure hit.
For sure. Yeah, it probably was a moderate success for them in terms of the record label looking at it, but there probably was a couple of eyebrows because you've only got to look at how successful S Club and Step songs were being at that time. Number 1, number 2, selling so many copies. And this is still in an era of the physical single as well. And if there wasn't that rush and that fan base and need to buy it, then it didn't do as well, which is a massive shame because this stands up against any of those songs that were released in that time.
This is one of those cases for Scooch where they probably should have released their album after this single, but they waited until after 4 singles. Then they released the album. It got to number 41. And whatever happens, if you release an album after 4 singles in the physical era, where else can the album campaign go? At most, you're going to have another 1 or 2 singles. Not that I'm a marketing manager. Not that I could have done Scooch any better, but I think this was probably the right time to push the album. They waited and they just waited a little bit too long.
I think there was a nervousness at this time with the charts from record companies about when you would release an album. If the singles had a steady climb or there was a decline, it was always a point of, well, we'll just put the record out. We know it's not going to do very well. And that's sort of come in waves. If you look at the music industry, there was an age in which it was standard on the 3rd or 4th single. That's when you release the album. And then I feel like it's cycled back to more 1 single album out.
Yeah.
Whereas now in the streaming era, it's so rare that an album will come out where you haven't had 3, 4 official singles, 2 promotional singles, because they're testing the water in a different way. And it's funny to me how much the music industry has circled back round in certain ways. And who knows, maybe Scooch would have had 10 number 1 singles if they'd have been releasing records now.
For sure.
For sure. Well, if you want to listen to More Than I Needed to Know by Scooch, you can find it on streaming. And where can they find us?
Can't Stop the Pop has a website where there are over 400 reviews, including this song, of course, which you can find at can'tstopthepop.com. We're also on social media. I am at Can't Stop Pop on X and can'tstop_the_pop on Instagram.
And I am at Matkins Actor on X and Matt_Atkins9 on Instagram.
And you can also now find us on TikTok at Can't Stop the Pop Podcast, where we basically do this, but in 60-second clips and just talk about loads of random songs from the 90s and noughties. So check us out there. We're also on YouTube at Can't Stop the Pop, because some episodes this season are video episodes. You can watch us, but not this time, not this episode. Sorry.
You missed me doing the Scooch dance. Do get in touch. Let us know what you think of the song, what you think of the show, what you think of us. Please leave us a review, but only a good one wherever you get your podcasts from.
Thank you so much for listening, and join us next time for more
Can't stop the pop.